Singapore has an incredibly rich cultural life. They have the willingness, they have the commitment, they have the resources, they have the cultural and arts resources to do good work and to build on the good work that they've already done. In our own United States, we say, one teaching artist with one curriculum, depending on who that curriculum is delivered to, is going to be a different program. It's the same thing where we can share what we've learned, we can share our structures and our models and our information, and hopefully give them some ideas that will help them to further develop their own work.
In October 2022, Maura O'Malley, Lifetime Arts CEO and co-founder, and Annie Montgomery, Senior Education Designer and Trainer, presented Creative Aging Best Practices and facilitated a 4-hour Creative Aging Foundations workshop at the Arts and Aging Forum in Singapore, which was hosted by the National Arts Council of Singapore. In this interview, Maura and Annie share their experiences participating in this international event. They share their insights about the arts, culture, and aging scene in Singapore, and share moments of learning and collaboration with local community artists and educators on how they engage older adults in lifelong learning educational programs. Maura also envisions how we can collectively share creative aging practices and resources internationally to succeed the common goal for universal lifelong learning opportunities. Could you share a little bit about what the arts, culture, and aging scene was like in Singapore overall, and what positive aging means for people in this country? Basically, how were they actively engaging older adults in this positive aging movement?
They're very aware of the aging population, and in fact, their demographics are even more startling than in the U.S. In Singapore, within a few years, 1/4 of the population will be over 65, as opposed to the U.S., which is 21%. For the past couple of years, I think actually since 2015, they have been working on improving aging services and taking stock of services for older adults in the country.
What were the similarities and differences in how they incorporate creative aging values or lifelong learning values, goals, and practices into their older adult education programs?
We noticed that there were many, many opportunities for people to take classes, to be retrained. There were a lot, in every mall, in every neighborhood, there were learning centers. The building that hosted the event that we were at was called Lifelong Learning Center. So there's a real emphasis on learning and engagement for the whole society there. National Gallery, the National Museum, the National Performing Arts Center, the Esplanade, all have formal programs to look at older adults differently and to provide programming for older adults in the arts. And it's a range, just like in the United States. It's a range from not so active engagement to active engagement in learning programs. There's quite a variety.
They don't call teaching artists, they call them community artists. And those of the community artists that we met that I would say, oh, they're definitely teaching artists, meaning they're practicing artists, they're working in community, they're interested in kind of long-term projects, which to me felt the closest to creative aging goals and values when they were working with the same group of people consistently. But they would call them projects more so than classes. But to me, I was like, aha, okay, that's creative aging arts education in the way it was described. So it's happening, but it seems to be more individually artist-based, more so than institutional-based. But that's really just from what we learned. There's a lot that I still don't know.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to my next question, Annie. What kind of aha moments or moments of connection, learning, and collaboration were there during the workshop between the community artists and also just between you and the artists?
They were kind of surprised by our codification of sort of our learning principles and our design principles, because that was new to them in terms of codifying it. Because sometimes when we talk about learning design principles, it is based on what we've seen artists doing, but we've sort of named it. The difference and the aha moment for them was like, oh, well, we are, they could connect. Okay, we are doing some social engagement. Oh, we are doing some sequential learning. But the aha moment was like, oh, we're moving to mastery with these folks. And we're moving to a sense of sort of identifying themselves, the older adults, that is, as artists too. Not just being simply guided by the artist and with the artist's direction, but this flip of like, through the project, the older adults start to see and believe in their own artistry and their own capabilities. And there, more than one artist was like, oh, we're not doing this for them. We're doing this with them. And I think that sort of turn was really exciting for a lot of the artists once we sort of kind of landed on that discovery together.
That topic sort of leads me to the panel discussion, Maura, that you participated with artists and arts educators and leaders from Singapore. So I kind of have the same question for you. Were there other aha moments of learning, discovery, relatability, differences? What questions did the panel raise for you? What was that experience like, hearing from those working in Singapore?
Well, they had an interesting group of panels. It was other than me, it was the woman who headed up the Esplanade from the National Performing Arts Center. And she talked a lot about their one program of intergenerational programming. So that was interesting to hear. They were very proud of that work. I think it was more theater-based or hip-hop music-based work with different generations. Another woman there was Emi Kiyota, who is an associate professor at the university there. She's also an architect by training, and she is a consultant to the National University Health System and looking at the physical structure of different parts of the city in terms of support for older adults. So the idea of universal design and the physical space of people was top of mind and of great interest there. So it was, there were some interesting questions from the audience too. One of the ones that I thought was most interesting was, it said, how do young artists help older people not to be nervous about getting older? So our response was, well, who's nervous about getting older? Is it the older people or is it the younger people? And looking at it, sort of flipping that question on its head. But it was a good group. There were 100 people online and 100 people in the audience, and they were very good questions. And I think people were interested in the way that we frame the programming that we do in terms of access and the impact of ageism on program design and delivery. So it was fascinating.
What were the views or attitude around ageism? How did you address sort of these components in the workshop or in the panel discussion?
I can speak about the workshop specifically. They needed more defining examples than we would normally see in the United States. I really had to go around to each table and give them my own sort of ageism or my ageist thoughts about myself. And I used myself so they would feel comfortable to be vulnerable in their own sharing too. But they all kind of needed that extra push because I do think that culturally, they really regard their older adults. I think that's testament to these efforts in making sure that their older adults are taken care of and that there's programs for them. And you will see in the parks, older adults everywhere. There's a visibility in Singapore with our older adults and respect for. And I do think their family, Maura and I talked about this a lot, that their family sort of dynamics are still much more together than they are in the United States, where we just fly across the country and our older adults are living, independently or in care systems. And you see less of that there. So we had to define it more. And then it also made it for a much more complex conversation, but without any like definitive sort of action steps, at least not in 4 hours around it. It was just sort of just beginning to understand what it might look like in their culture, which there's still a lot of discovery to do.
How do you envision our own creative aging practices and goals in the US at Lifetime Arts? How do we see those integrating into Singapore's own practices? And in addition to that, other culturally different countries, but doing this in a collaborative way that is respectful to their cultural norms and traditions.
Singapore has an incredibly rich cultural life. They have great artists. They have many, many arts organizations in all different disciplines. So they have all of the assets and all of the things that any community would need to begin to build programming that's responsive and engaging and meaningful to older adults and to the organizations themselves. It's always important to share work and to share and knowing and understanding that what they do with what we've shared with them, it may look very, very different, but we've learned a lot over these years, and we have been successful in creating programs and services that are making things better for older adults. And so if any of that can rub off, I think Singapore, they have the willingness, they have the commitment, they have the resources, they have the cultural and arts resources to do good work and to build on the good work that they've already done. In our own United States, we say, one teaching artist with one curriculum, depending on who that curriculum is delivered to, is going to be a different program. It's the same thing where we can share what we've learned, we can share our structures and our models and our information, and hopefully give them some ideas that will help them to further develop their own work.
For more information about Lifetime Arts, please visit lifetimearts.org and sign up for our newsletter. To learn more about the creative aging field, please visit our resource site, Creative Aging Resource, at creativeagingresource.org, and sign up for the Creative Aging Resource newsletter at creativeagingnews.substack.com.